What it do, bruh? Talk of the town, Nintendo, Doc Trey still holding it down, still make the best games, and you know this, bro. It's the truth. You don't like it, you can have that seat though.
And it's weird because in some of these shots, in some of these instances, it actually looks like the Switch 2 version is more detailed than even the PlayStation 5 version, which leads me to believe that this game more than likely is actually using DLSS. So the hits keep coming. So you guys may remember the video I did a couple weeks ago about how Street Fighter 6 on the Switch 2 was looking to be using DLSS because there was some strange things going on with how the image looked, which told me that this was definitely a DLSS title. Well, today, Digital Foundry went back and actually looked at some good quality footage of Street Fighter 6 on Switch 2, and lo and behold, they now confirm that DLSS is being used in Street Fighter 6 on the Nintendo Switch 2. So it says, while our initial pixel counts of Street Fighter 6 during the Switch 2 Nintendo Direct reveal pointed to a native 1080p based on limited footage, the more recent Nintendo Treehouse feed, it was the next day. Anyway, the more recent Nintendo Treehouse feed shows a scale from a native 960 by 540p, which is 540p, to a 1080p target using an AI upscaling method, with evidence suggesting NVIDIA's DLSS based on this footage. Looking back, this 540p upscale appears to be in place in the original direct footage as well. Well, why wouldn't it be? The treehouse was the next day. What? Or the day after. The treehouse was 2 days later. Like what? Anyway, it's a remarkably clean scale in most shots, with the first few frames following a camera cut being one way to catch the base resolution from its dot mode play. We'll be sure to report back once we have more information. So, the second game that Digital Foundry says had no DLSS, they went back and looked at the footage again. Not new footage, the old footage, but better quality footage, and have now come to the conclusion that yet another game on the Switch 2 has DLSS. And this has happened to be the first game that we were saying had DLSS on the Switch 2. Now, as I pointed out in the original video, which has aged like wine, make sure you guys check it out if you haven't seen that one. The reason I knew that there was some AI upscaling and some DLSS at play was the fact that it appeared that the Nintendo Switch 2 version of the character models had more detail than the PlayStation 5 version. And that makes no sense other than AI upscaling being at work. And the reason why I knew this was the case, because the doctor doesn't just follow video games, the doctor also follows what's going on in the movie industry. And you guys know I'm an avid collector of DVDs, Blu-rays, and 4K Blu-rays and stuff like that. Well, if you follow what's been going on specifically with 4Ks, and especially 4Ks from James Cameron, you would see that with his movies, they have decided to go the quick route and use AI upscaling for their 4Ks instead of the traditional and admittedly very long, painstaking method of remastering these movies, doing a full 4K restoration, and that requires you to actually go back to the original film reel negative and scan each shot by hand, pretty much. And it takes a very long time. So they obviously did not want to do that. So what they've done with these James Cameron movies on 4K is they pretty much have taken the old already done remasters of these movies on Blu-ray that are like a decade old and simply applied AI upscaling to them with varying results. It's getting better, but the first ones were horrible, like Terminator 2 on the 4K. That's why nobody wants this 4K, because it looks terrible. Okay? Now, with the release of the last Cameron 4K that came out, the original Terminator, they're getting a little bit better, but they still used the old master of the original, or not the original, the Blu-ray from about a decade ago, and they applied AI upscaling to that. Now, the issue with that is when you apply an AI upscale to, well, especially something like movies, the AI adds things sometimes that were never there in the first place. And the reason why that happens is because the AI model is it's a database full of a bunch of information, full of millions and millions of pictures, and millions of videos of people, of everything. And it takes all that information and it gives you its best approximation of a picture, what it thinks a picture or video should look like based on all of the information in its database. Now, the problem with this, especially when it comes to movies, is that a lot of times it does not end up being accurate. So if you want something that looks exactly how the director intended or how the movie was actually shot, when you get an AI upscale, most of the time you're not going to get that. For example, AI sees something like film grain as bad or as an error. So if you AI upscale something, it's going to automatically scrub all the film grain out of the movie. But the problem is when you scrub out film grain, it also scrubs out detail. So that's why a lot of these things, when they have AI upscales, everyone looks waxy and they look kind of fake. Now, this new Terminator 4K, they actually try to combat that by adding a grain filter in post-processing after the fact so that it looks natural still. But they still technically scrubbed the grain out. The AI scrubbed the grain out and then they added the grain back. So, but the results actually look pretty decent. But most purists, movie fans, still want the original and don't want this because it's pretty much adding, a lot of times it adds detail that was never there. So if the AI sees a picture of a man with stubble and it's upscaling it from a lower quality image, a lot of times it will add stubble, it'll add hairs, it'll add bumps, it'll add moles, it'll add pores that were never in the original source. And that's what it looks like could have been happening with Street Fighter 6 on the Nintendo Switch 2, which is why some of these pictures, if you go back and look at them, look at these comparisons, there's details in the Switch 2 version of these character models that's not even in the PlayStation 5. And that's because obviously AI upscaling was being used. Now, this isn't as big of a deal with video games as it is with movies. Because, you know, gamers, we want stuff to be as detailed and stuff as possible. So And then also, I believe that developers, they can go back and kind of like tweak these to their liking. Most of these with the movies, they just put the AI upscaling and then call it a day. That's why you're seeing even some of these movies that they use the AI upscaling for the 4K. Sometimes words don't get translated right. Sometimes background faces don't get translated right because the AI is doing an approximation of what it thinks it should look like, and it comes out completely wrong. But with video games, I think they can tweak it a little bit more, and that's why we haven't really seen any issues with that just yet. But very interesting. This is yet another DLSS game confirmed for Switch 2. Let me know what you guys think in the comments section.